to Pals in Politics, the place to hear from those teaching, learning, and impacted by politics, government, citizenship, and democracy.
Hello there, and welcome to our latest Pals and Politics. This is our podcast where we talk all things about government, politics, citizenship, and democracy with all of those people who are living it, working in it, teaching it, studying it, or simply impacted by it. So whether you're a student, you're a teacher, or just someone who's just trying to figure out how things work and what's going on, you are in absolutely the right place. And as always, we are giving you a raw, unedited conversation and the points of view of our guest speaker for the day. If you would like what you hear in the first half, please do check out the second half at the Blitz Education for Students Politics classroom. And also don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Now, I'm really excited by today's guest because this is a bit of shared history for us both. Today, I'm joined by Beatrice Learmouth, who is a student I used to teach, scarily 5 years ago. Hi, B.
Hi, James. Really nice to be on there. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. And we were just saying that we parted ways last time just before COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah, just I was in the did my A-levels the second year that COVID was impacted by. So yeah, we had a lot of Google Meets just like this over COVID period, which seems like an age ago now. So yeah, but it's great to be on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you. And I was saying to B just beforehand that actually the reason we're doing these on Google Meet is because that was the time I learned how to use Google Meet, and I've never really taught myself any other platform. So that's why we're doing it on here. So thanks, B, for joining us. B, for those of you watching or listening, B is currently studying a master's in financial journalism, and she writes stories about business, politics, money, and foreign affairs. She previously, as she said, studied politics at A-level and at undergraduate level, and her particular expertise is Russia and the post-Soviet space, which you picked a brilliant time to start that. And you studied Russian and lived in the Baltics as part of your degree. B, where did you live in the Baltics?
Yeah, so it was a bit of an odd one because I started before the invasion of Ukraine, and originally would have planned to go to Russia, and that's like studying Russian degree. But I ended up going to Tallinn in Estonia in the first half of the year, which has quite a large Russian-speaking population. And then I was in Eastern Latvia for the second half, which was quite an experience because I live with a host family there, and there's pretty much no foreigners, and it's entirely Russian-speaking there. So yeah, but that was a very interesting experience, a real culture shock, but yeah, it's great for my Russian and to just, really immerse yourself in another culture like that.
What was your takeaway from that experience? What was your one main takeaway, do you think?
I think that town in particular, I mean, it's the largest Russian-speaking town in Europe, in the EU, not in the EU. But what do I mean? Do I mean in the EU? Yes, I think it's probably in the EU or in NATO maybe. But yeah, it's one of the few Russian-speaking towns on the other side of the new Iron Curtain, if you can put it like that. And I think it's had quite a lot of coverage in Western media, and it's often kind of assumed that the population are quite pro-Putin and pro-Russia, and there's sort of been a lot of articles written about it as if it's kind of like a danger for the West and that these people are going to revolt in some way, and just because the fact that it's Russian speaking, really. And I actually thought that, like, you realize as soon as you go there, that's just completely not the case, and it's really unfair judgment on that town, and the residents there they don't want anything to do with it, really, and it's very unfair to sort of label them as that just because of the language they speak. And it's actually quite dangerous because I think in Ukraine, like, Putin, one of his justifications for the invasion was the fact that some of the residents are Russian speaking, and if you start assuming people's views based on their language, that can have very dangerous implications. So yeah, that was probably my biggest takeaway, to kind of not assume something based on people's beliefs based on what language they speak or their nationality.
I think there's some really powerful lessons all round in that conclusion there, B. Okay, so we said you started A-level politics. That was really where your sort of interest in it really. If I'm right in remembering, B, you did your EPQ in Russia, which sort of started this sort of interest. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. I did it on, yeah, it's fun. It's funny looking back on it now. I did it on Nord Stream 2, which was the gas pipeline which they built between Germany and Russia, which since has caused all sorts of problems since the invasion. I remember actually arguing, I think my thesis question was, is the US right to oppose the construction of it? Because they said it was on grounds of energy security. And I think I remember saying that they probably were, because that Russia would hold this huge power over Germany if that pipeline existed, and that is of course what ended up happening. So yeah, it was quite it's funny to look back on now, but yeah, I think I just got so interested in kind of the mystery of Russia, and just it's just like a fascinating country and place, and obviously so fascinating in like the geopolitical space at the moment. So yeah, that was a big pull for me whilst I was studying A-level politics.
Brilliant. Started there, so A-level politics and your EPQ. And can you just talk us through what happened then? How did that interest grow, develop, manifest itself to where you are now?
Yeah, so I was saying earlier, just before the call, I think A-level politics was honestly so formative for me. I think I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't studied politics A-level. I particularly loved US politics, which we had to do. I'm sure that's still the case now. I assume, is it still the case that you do?
You choose. For example, would you do global politics or American politics?
Yeah, that was something I particularly loved, because I think it's something I had no idea about and knew nothing about. And I loved our lessons. I think it was also really great for me, politics, in terms of, like, I'm sure you remember I was quite shy and quiet.
You were.
And it was a way for me, like, it really got me out of my shell, because I was really quite passionate about it. So it was great for like building up my confidence. I think that's one of the main things that I got from it, really, as well as just helping me sort of find a passion and find what I'm interested in. I don't think when I started doing politics A-level, I thought I'd end up doing it at university, but I loved it so much that
I'll take that.
But yeah, so it was hugely beneficial for me, politics, and recommend it to to everyone. I think that it was my favorite A-level by far.
And you went on from A-level to Bristol?
Yes, and then studied politics and Russian at Bristol. Started in 2021. So yeah.
What modules did you do?
Yeah, so it was great politics for really, you can do so many different things. I mean, in my last year, I had a particularly wide range of things that I was studying. I always like to just dip my toes in everything. So I did one on states and markets, which was really interesting. And then in that same term, I did one on world politics and popular culture, which is completely the opposite end of the spectrum to states and markets, I feel. But yeah, that was completely fascinating. It was like we sort of looked at films and books, and what they tell us. We sort of linked it to political theory, and like what these films or books can tell us about international relations, or the way in which certain countries are represented in films and stuff. That was very interesting. And then I've done modules in peace building in Latin America, and Russian politics on the politics side. and US politics I did again. Yeah, so it's been a whole mix really, which is what I loved really about it, because I'm someone that can never really quite decide what I'm sort of a little bit interested in everything, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So that it suited me well to be able to try a bit of everything, bit of international relations, bit of political theory. Yeah, it was great.
I believe in academic terms we call that a generalist, to try and make it sound like there's a deliberate choice. But yes, it's a fantastic thing. And you went on to do what you're doing now, which is a master's in financial journalism.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, I wanted, journalism was quite a last minute decision for me, really. I mean, not last minute. I did student journalism in my final year of university, and that was something I've really enjoyed. And I recommend anyone wanting to get into journalism, that is definitely something you should be doing, because it's just a great way to kind of get your name out there and get a bit of practice. And it's not particularly high stakes, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's just quite good fun. And you actually do get to work sometimes on like really interesting stories doing student journalism as well. I mean, especially because there's less local journalism these days. I think there's particularly like good reason to be doing it, because there's kind of that gap in the market now, and you can actually genuinely pick up stuff that is important stories that should be told. So yeah, I think that was part of the reason I got into journalism. And then obviously doing politics in Russia, and I was just very engaged in current affairs, and obviously very interested in that side of things. And financial journalism specifically, I get asked a lot, like, why financial?
That would be my question.
Because I think it is quite random in some ways. I mean, it's the smallest. There's a city university which has a huge journalism department, and it's maybe not the smallest, the second smallest course. I think podcasting is the smallest in the journalism department. The other courses have, you know, more than 50, some of them, and we've only got 15, so it's quite a niche. But I think I wanted to do financial partly because I recognized it was something I didn't really know much about, and I thought it's so important to actually be financially literate as a journalist, because I think a lot of the time, you know, part of your job as a journalist is to hold power to account, and a lot of power comes from money ultimately, and it's a really good skill to be able to kind of follow the money, and be able to read accounts and understand what like business figures are talking about, and be able to sort of cut through that sometimes ridiculous jargon that actually means nothing and makes people think things are more complicated than they are. So yeah, I thought it would be a good niche to build, and something that's very important, and that not enough journalists kind of do have that. So yeah.
That's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. You're absolutely right. One of the things obviously we do talk a lot about in politics is money, and quite often they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, exactly. It seeps into everything, I think, money. It's, you know.
You remember my old quote, money is like water on a pavement. It fills every hole and finds every crack.
Yeah, exactly. It's very obviously politics. I mean, I remember in A-level politics we talk a lot about lobbying and that kind of thing, and it's definitely a good thing to be able to understand.
Would you advise doing a master's to people that are maybe coming to the end of their undergraduate education?
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, with journalism, you kind of have to do either a master's, or there's this qualification called the NCTJ, which a lot of people do. They're both like, you need one of them really. most of the time to get into journalism. So, and I definitely recommend the one at City. It's really great. It's very practical, hands-on. It feels completely different to my undergrad, which was, mostly writing essays. This is very much we get sent out each week to find local stories and speak to people on the street and that kind of thing. So it's very different, but it's great for that. It really pushes you outside of your comfort zone and kind of gets you. It's focused on, your career. But yeah, I think masters in general are a great thing to do, particularly now, because so many people do go to university. I think if you have the ability to do a master's, then it's definitely a great thing to do and develop a bit more of an expertise in something that you're passionate about.
Brilliant. And how do you give me one tangible way that you think that your study of either A-level or undergraduate politics has helped you in your masters on financial journalism?
Ooh, I think it's great for kind of always being open to listening to the other point of view that isn't necessarily your own. Because I think, I always remember our class sessions in A-level politics, it's just so open and there was never any judgment for any, your viewpoint. And I think that's so important, especially in this day and age when partisanship is just so terrible. That's definitely something you need in journalism. You absolutely have to understand the other side of the argument, otherwise you can't justify writing an article on it, really. But there's definitely some journalism that is not necessarily understanding the other point of view, but I think that is key. That's probably my biggest take.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's a lot of the work that political education for students now does. It is just trying to get people, adults as well as young people, and actually as adults can be worse, but just to appreciate the other side, even if they agree with it, to appreciate it and try and understand it.
Because it is worrying that, I think, particularly amongst young people, the lack of willingness to listen to the other side is scary. Sometimes I think social media has made it particularly bad, probably. And I think studying politics at both A-level and undergrad is so good for that, because that's the whole point, really, is taking into account all different views to kind of come to your own conclusion. And I think that's incredibly valuable and clearly and a great thing that political education for students does.
Oh, thank you very much. Is there a news story that's happening at the moment, or has happened fairly recently in the world of in that overlap between money and politics that you've talked about? Is there a particular news story that you found particularly interesting or important?
Trying to think. I mean, for me, I'm just completely the Iran war seems to be all this happening at the moment and completely dominate the news agenda. But that does, oversexed with so many things. I think what's really interesting with that is kind of, obviously, energy prices has been one of the main stories to come out of that, and immediately that is money again, and finance, and that completely intersects with UK politics, of course, because now it kind of puts a lot of Labour's plans on halt, because they're having to deal with all this economic fallout of the war, and consumers are obviously going to have to pay a lot more for their energy, and that's not necessarily going to be as happy. And as I know from my A-level politics classes, people tend to vote first and foremost about what they want to happen to the economy.
The economy's stupid.
Yeah. I think, it's maybe a slightly boring answer, but
No.
It's all that comes to my mind right now, because it completely dominates the news agenda at the moment, and rightly so, really, because it's changing a lot of aspects of our lives.
So a bit of a controversial question, really based on what you've just said.
Yeah.
Is this good news for energy companies and energy bosses?
Oh, that is a controversial question. I think, I mean, yes, in some ways. I think what does is like depressing is these oil trading firms and gas trading firms that hugely profit off it as well. That sort of bet on the oil and gas price. Have probably made an insane amount of money off this whole thing. But yeah, I think I mean there was already a trend towards you know, not like moving away from renewables. But I think now that there's so much energy insecurity, that's going to accelerate pace even more, and that these like oil and gas companies are going to ultimately profit off of that, because now people just want energy wherever they can get it from. And yeah,
Which is
yeah,
it goes full circle to your EPQ you did about energy security. And I remember we were talking about it in 2020 when you were doing it, and it was the Trump argument at the end of his first term that you can't expect America to be tough on Russia if Europe is going to basically surrender itself through its energy needs.
Exactly.
And this was pre-Ukraine, and now ultimately we have got a lot more of discussion about energy. Seems to be much more about security than it does about climate change. So I think we've kind of gone full circle to your EPQ topic here.
The EPQ that it keeps cropping back up.
It absolutely does. You were ahead of your time, B. Brilliant. Well, we're going to take a short break there, B. After our break, we're going to talk a bit more about B's work in journalism, as well as her studies on Russia, and how that has really overlapped to her views about journalism in general and journalism in Russia, which is obviously a controversial topic in and of itself. So if you want to hear more, please head over to the community where you can hear the second half of our conversation with B. We will be back in just a moment. Sit tight.